back, everyone, to a brand new edition of Virtue's Rage right here on the big VitoBrand.com. And I am Virtue, being joined once again by Dr. Jargo. Hey, man, what's going on? You know, we're recording this just before we go live later this evening. Your debut on the No DQ review. That's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. Busted out my King Haku shirt for the occasion, so I don't come across as too big of a Japan mark. But man, I gotta say, what a crazy week in the world of professional wrestling, right? I mean, since the last time we talked, we had Christian winning the Impact title. We got CM Punk supposedly on his way into AEW. We got SummerSlam. We've got TakeOver. We've got NXT going in the toilet. It's a crazy time to be a wrestling fan right now.
And is New Japan touring over here in California right now?
Well, it's not exactly a tour, but they did have a big show at the Torch at the LA Memorial Coliseum last week. It was their first time in the States with fans since the pandemic hit. It had about 2,000 fans. And the show was really, really good. Unfortunately, running outside venues is really, really hard for professional wrestling, man. It sounded like there was nobody there because it was outside, so all the sound goes up. And so when it comes to like the production aspect of it, there were certainly some hiccups. But as far as the show goes, it was really good. And now we're advertising the next set of shows here in the States. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in Japan very, very upset because it's like September 26th. But they're advertising Jon Moxley for the show. They're advertising Switchblade Jay White for the show. They're advertising Will Ospreay, Minoru Suzuki. Like, it's going to be a big deal, but it's also right in the middle of the G1 climax. So that means, like, Switchblade Jay White's not going to be in the G1? Really?
Is there any way around that? Any logistics?
Not with quarantine,
really?
Not with quarantine rules in Japan. I mean, because you got to quarantine for 10 days every time you enter the country.
Well, okay, so tell me the G1 Climax, that usually gets their number one contender for Wrestle Kingdom, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if Jay White wasn't in that, just say, is he the never open weight champion?
Yeah, which is basically the number 2 belt in New Japan now.
So he could still have a big part of Wrestle Kingdom. I don't know. I know it's still weird because you think he's like a main player over there, the leader of is he the leader of the Bullet Club?
As much as there is a leader, I mean, like, because Bullet Club is kind of a rule by democracy, but he is definitely the front person. He is the spokesperson for the Bullet Club.
So he has that title, right? So I'm sure he could still be a big part of Wrestle Kingdom, which is what, first week of January every year?
January 4th every year. Does it, like this year? I think it's on a Tuesday.
So, yeah, okay, so it doesn't matter what day it is. They just go January 4th.
Yep, Japanese culture tends to revolve more so around dates than weekends.
Okay, gotcha. That's interesting. Now, we've seen some New Japan stuff happening with AEW wrestlers. Like, we know Jon Moxley once held the U.S. Championship. Who just recently lost it? Wasn't it Lance Archer?
Lance Archer lost that championship to Hiroshi Tanahashi during the show that happened at the Memorial Coliseum. And it sure seems like we're going to get Moxley and Tanahashi at some point. Jon Moxley was sitting ringside for that match and looked utterly disgusted when Hiroshi Tanahashi won the IWGP US title. So I'm looking forward to that.
Now, I knew Will Ospreay was out injured. He did that, like, you know how they do the semi-retirement. I don't know how serious his injury was. Is he cleared now? Is he back? Did he wrestle at that show, or is he going to wrestle?
They say that, well, Ospreay said at that show that he is cleared. Okay. Ospreay was also not physical in any way, shape, or form at that show. Ospreay is in a position right now. Will Ospreay was the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. He was forced to relinquish that title. So now Shingo Takagi is IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, but Ospreay is still walking around with his copy of the championship, claiming to be the real IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And he is so disgusted with New Japan and how they have treated him, trying to strip him of this title, that I'm not going to be in the G1. I'm going to stay over here in the United States, and I'm going to appear on Strong, and screw you Japanese people. That's basically the angle that Ospreay is taking right now. So eventually we are going to be on a collision course for Shingo Takagi versus Will Ospreay to unify the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship.
So you said they're not doing the tour. So they did one show, right?
Yep. This was a one-off, and now they're booking some other shows. This is all going around New Japan Strong and New Japan of America as they try to launch that brand into something.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, you'll have to keep me posted on that. You know what? I kind of secretly follow that G1 Climax tournament every year because I like to see who they pushed to the main event,
And
Wrestle Kingdom.
When it comes to the G1, it's a month, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a month-long tournament, A block and B block, round robin style. So everybody wrestles everybody. 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 points for a loss. Winner of the A block faces off with the winner of the B block. That gives you a contract to face off with the champion inside of the Tokyo Dome on January 4th. Now, things do get a little bit more complicated because we do run into issues like Kota Ibushi won the contract last year, but he was beaten in the tournament by Switchblade Jay White. So he then has to defend that contract against anybody that defeats him in the tournament. This year was the first time that somebody has actually lost the contract. So that's how Jay found his way into the main event of Wrestle Kingdom as well. So there's a lot of fun, different stories that you can tell throughout the G1 Climax. And every year over the course of a month, you end up with 5-6 contenders for match of the year. Because the G1 it's like the most grueling Money in the Bank that you've ever seen.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, I kind of keep track of it. I see highlights and stuff online. I don't necessarily watch every match, but I'm always interested to see who they push out of that every year to see what they decide. I know Wrestle Kingdom too has its main event, but then you still have big matches like co-main events, semi-main events.
It's the closest thing to WrestleMania that's not WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. I know AEW is still starting out, and they got their all-outs or their double or nothings or whatever their big event would be, but it's Wrestle Kingdom's the second biggest wrestling show behind WrestleMania as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking 65,000 people inside of the Tokyo Dome. I mean it's a big freaking deal. Yep.
All right, now we got SummerSlam this weekend. There's NXT on Sunday. Boy, that's ass backwards. So, Saturday's SummerSlam, NXT Sunday.
It's something with Vegas. Like there's something else going on in that venue on Sunday. So they're running TakeOver at the Capitol Wrestling Center.
Right.
So
yeah, that's not going to seem too significant to me. But
it might be a Raiders preseason game. The Raiders might be home on Sunday.
I mean, they got some good matches for the NXT show. So now Rampage. Now we're going to talk about this over on the No DQ review, how we think CM Punk might debut. But tomorrow, AEW is going to be put to the test because there's a lot of fans that bought tickets to that show in Chicago tomorrow night. Could you imagine? Let's briefly talk about that. What if he wasn't on that show? Just theoretical. You and I both know it'll probably happen. But what if it didn't?
Is it safe to say that you could be looking at like a 1986 Puerto Rico style riot? I mean, like, seriously, in Chicago, the United Center?
I think if it wasn't going to happen, AEW would have came out and said, we have not come to terms with CM Punk. I think they would have literally said that to cover their ass.
How do you feel about how they've promoted this? Because when you look at the card for Rampage, does not look good.
It's the second Rampage. It's not the debut. They started it last week.
Right. It's a very underwhelming card. And I mean, like, you look at that card and it's like, something else is going to happen at this show. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Here's my theory. They wanted him as a surprise, even though we know, but to where he's not promoted. They're going to do it on Rampage and they figure, hey, second show. It's a Friday night, 10 o'clock. as long as we do good in the arena and the arena pops, if the rate, if we only do 1 million viewers because we're the slot we're in, but now we'll have Punk debuted, and then we can promote him for Wednesday next week, Dynamite, which I think, is that also in Chicago?
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe, and I don't know if that's Tony Khan's brilliant thinking or if it just happened that way. That's kind of why I think maybe it's going to happen.
I mean, you only get one shot at this. You know what I mean? You can only bring CM Punk back for the first time in 7 years once. And I feel like I'm a huge Kiss fan, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when Kiss got back together, they did it on the USS Intrepid and on a freaking aircraft carrier. And they had Conan and O'Brien come in and introduce them and invited like all of the media. Like, it was a big freaking deal. I almost feel like that's how they should have done CM Punk. Like, I don't think a surprise return of CM Punk is what people want. Like, we want to know this is going to happen. We want to watch it live. Like, I feel like they should have just straight up advertised, hey, CM Punk's going to be here on Friday. You might want to tune into the show. That
would have been cool if they could have had some type of like press conference air that he signed and he's going to be there too. Like, I don't know if they would have went to any news affiliate or whatever, or Sports Illustrated would have bid on it, any of those ones that have wrestling fans that work for them. But yeah, I thought that would have been better too. But this is why I feel they're doing the Chicago Rampage, and this will be the pseudo surprise that everybody knows about. And then they can promote him for Dynamite and see how he affects the ratings. I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned. We'll have something to talk about for sure next week, because it'll either happen or not happen. And if it happens, we have to see how well it happens.
Just as a scenario, okay? Let's say CM Punk returns, but the CM Punk return is simply this. Jon Moxley is standing in the ring at the end of AEW Dynamite. Cult of Personality hits. CM Punk walks out on the stage and waves. And he grabs a microphone and he says, "Tune in Wednesday to Dynamite." Like,
you mean if it was on Rampage tomorrow night, that's how it happened?
Right. Like, if that's it, if it's just like, Punk makes an appearance at the very end of the show for a stare down and they're like, "Oh, tune in Wednesday for Dynamite." Like, I think people are going to be pissed, dude.
What if they did that, but then after they go off the air, he still does a little something for the house? How they do. I don't know. You're right. It's crazy. It's crazy that we're talking about these possibilities.
You're right. It is. But I got one that's even crazier for you, Virgil.
Okay. I think you hinted this at the end of last week's show. So go ahead. Indulge me.
So the tease was what would happen if the biggest star in the WWE jumped to AEW. And I told you the answer to this question is John Cena. I think this is a very real possibility. Am I insane for thinking that?
I'm trying to give you a reason why you're not insane. I feel like if we were talking about Brock Lesnar, then yeah, I don't know why, but when you bring up Cena and that role, it would be ridiculous. Like, to me, that would be bigger shock than Punk coming back. It would, because everybody would be like, the golden boy of WWE the last 15 years is in AEW. Now, you tell me this. If this is something you think could happen, why would Cena, not why would AEW do it? We know why they would do it.
Clearly.
Why would John Cena do it?
Because John Cena is a movie star. John Cena did this new Suicide Squad movie,
and by the way, it was, I don't know if you've seen it. He did awesome. Like, to me, this was his coming out party in Hollywood. I know he's done a lot of stuff before. This was like, dude, you're at that level, I think.
But so he did such a good job that the executives of the studio went to James Gunn, the director of it, and said, "We want to do a spin-off TV series for Suicide Squad surrounding one of the characters. Which one should it be?" And without hesitation, James Gunn said, John Cena. So we're going to get John Cena in a weekly TV show as the Peacemaker. But here's the thing that's interesting about this. If you watch WWE TV over the last couple of weeks, they're not really pushing Suicide Squad. And you would think that they would be. And why is that?
That is strange.
Because the film studio that did Suicide Squad is Warner Media. And oh yeah, John, you know, we also have this other property that's a wrestling property called AEW, which is on TNT, which is owned by Warner Media. This could all be done in-house as part of his Hollywood career through Warner Media, even bypassing the AEW aspect, or maybe Warner Media kind of kicks some money towards AEW to help bring in John Cena. Like, I think this is a very real possibility, because if you think the wrestling business is crooked, ho ho, look into Hollywood politics.
And I would never say never. I mean, because, you know, Roman is that loyal guy to WWE for this generation. Brock always seems to go back because Vince McMahon gives him whatever amount of money that he wants. And so that would be interesting. I would have to convince myself that you made a great argument there, a great point with Cena in his movie career, his acting career. And if he wants to keep building that ladder, that's a better opportunity perhaps for him, obviously, than WWE. Gosh, would you think he would have, like, say he did that, would he have that discussion with Vince McMahon? Hey, this is what I want to do and why. I just feel like he has that loyalty to Vince. That would be like epic if it happened.
You know, and it's the film studio thing. That's what really makes me wonder if this could be a very real possibility. And I hope so, because to bring this whole conversation full circle, the dream match of dream matches for me is Hiroshi Tanahashi versus John Cena. Like that, I mean, Tanahashi is the John Cena of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Give me a best of 3 series. Give me one in the Tokyo Dome. Give me one in, you know, the Congo, and give me one in AEW. Like, sign me up, man. I am fully down for John Cena versus Hiroshi Tanahashi, and it would be awesome.
If you say that about Tanahashi, what would you say? What's Okada?
I guess Okada would be more like the Roman Reigns at this point, and I say that in that he has become the number 1 guy since John Cena. Yeah. That's about where the comparisons between Okada and Roman Reigns come to an end. But Tanahashi carried New Japan Pro Wrestling there for about 15 years, where he was the man. And he still is the man. He went out and had a hell of a match with Lance Archer. Him and Shingo Takagi almost burned down the Tokyo Dome on 24 hours notice. It was supposed to be Kota Ibushi and Shingo, and then Ibushi got sick with aspirational pneumonia, and they were like, hey, Ace, can you step in? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you a 5-star match in the main event of the Tokyo Dome on 24 hours notice, because I'm Hiroshi freaking Tanahashi. Incredible guy. Incredible.
That pneumonia wasn't COVID related, was it?
No, at first they had said that he had spiked a fever, and they thought that it was a reaction to the COVID vaccine.
Oh, gotcha.
But then they come to find out it was aspirational pneumonia. Ibushi was in the hospital for like 3 weeks.
And aspirational pneumonia is kind of like when you swallow liquids or food, and it builds that pneumonia up in your.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully there's good news there. And by the way, just in closing here, we're going to do a little bit shorter of a show this week, but we'll be back to full strength next week. Dan Lambert returned on Dynamite this week, and he said everything. You know, people are like, oh, he's just doing the Jim Cornette gimmick. No, it's not. It's different. He's obviously there to help AEW, and he's working heels with the MMA guys, and Archer's involved with this, and I dug it, dude. I'm giving Tony Khan props for allowing this to happen, and Dan Lambert an open mic, more or less, to say those things about the fans, to get heat. Am I wrong? I mean, I'm marking out for it, dude. Am I wrong? What do you think?
There's a lot going on here, and there's a lot to unpack. As far as the Dan Lambert side of this thing goes, I normally like Dan Lambert. I liked what he did in Impact Wrestling. I liked the first promo that he cut in AEW. I even watched this promo twice because I knew you were going to want to talk about this, because I know how much you love Dan Lambert. I hated the promo last night.
Man, tell me why. It was gold, but I need to hear why you hated it.
The reason I hated the promo was because he became Dolph Ziggler last night. He was on there just yelling into the microphone, and I felt like he was scolding me, like he was just yelling at me. He has to learn how to take it back a little bit, because the first
I'm
time,
gonna give you that. And you know
the
why?
first time I watched it, I didn't get any of the content because I just felt like I was being scolded. Like he just take that same content, dial it back a little bit, and then when you turn it up, it actually means something. Whereas for like 5 minutes, I felt like he was just screaming at me. It was a Dolph Ziggler promo.
He was screaming, and my girlfriend said, "Why is he screaming?" But she does not like wrestling, although she does want to see Cena versus Reigns. But she's like, you know, the MMA stuff. She's like, man, I want to see what's going to happen with this guy's fighters now.
Now,
But
as far as the Lance Archer side goes, I love Lance Archer versus Dan Lambert because I finally figured out where it could be going. And it brings me back to Lance Archer's time in New Japan Pro Wrestling and a guy by the name of Minoru Suzuki, who is the godfather of all MMA. Y'all can talk about your Ken Shamrocks and whatnot. Minoru Suzuki, badass. Tapped out Ken Shamrock twice. That's how much of a badass Suzuki was.
hey, I mean, this is not politically correct, and I know it was work, but he beat the shit out of Asuka.
Yeah, I mean, dude,
Or
Suzuki's
Okada, whatever she was over there.
He's a scary, scary man. Now, if I can get Lambert and Suzuki in the same place at the same time with the MMA connection between Pancrase and UFC, I think that's really, really cool. Unfortunately, they somehow drug my friend Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page into this thing, and I did not like that at all. But it's going to be Suzuki and Lance Archer versus Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And Scorpio, I love you, brother, but I would not show up to that match.
All right, well, we will continue some of this conversation next week. I obviously love the Dan Lambert promo. I see where you could say he screamed too much, he scolded you. That's why I loved it. I mean, I don't know. I felt like he was saying that to that fan base. But you're right. I'm a more methodical delivery guy, even though in the indies, 150, 250 people, it's different.
Yeah, but I feel like the actual content got lost in the presentation. And it was good content. That's the problem.
Maybe he was extra excited. Well, we'll see in the future. I'm sure this is going to keep going on, and they'll have plenty more to say. So we can kind of see if it evolves from there. But with that said, you got any plugs? Obviously, you're going to be on the No DQ review this week with us.
Looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. New episode of Destino dropping this weekend, talking some Wrestle Grand Slam as well as Resurgence from out in Los Angeles, and a new edition of Hitting the Marks because there's a whole lot going on in the world. We get to talk Afghanistan. We get to talk COVID, the deconstruction of the American media, hittingthemarks.com. It's a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. I'm everywhere these days, man. I'm going to be also Rad Rob's Wrestling Review. I will be on there Saturday night for the SummerSlam review. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Good having you on as always. And we will be back. So make sure you follow me if you dare on Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. But for Dr. Jargo, this has been Virtue's Rage right here on the BigVitoBrand.com. Great wrestling discussion as always. And we look forward to doing it again next time. See you later.